Hello everyone, this is part 5 of What If Naruto Met Past Hinata, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. The world stopped turning. All around her, Hinata's life came screeching to a sudden, and rather painful, halt. Www what? Her voice was barely a whisper as it came out of her mouth, but that wasn't such an issue because everyone, had stopped moving. Kiba stared at her. The man serving sake stared at her. People who had been previously occupied were now silent, and staring at her. Sakura was standing in awe and Sasuke looked just as span as usual, save for his raised eyebrow. Haru promptly, and with great Uchiha dignity, shoved his hand in his mouth, eyes looking curiously at everyone. And most of all, Naruto was standing, mouth hanging to the floor. Oh shush, Kiba said suddenly, eyes bugging out, you didn't know about the baby. Hinata didn't reply, only gaped. B, she stuttered, sounding much like an engine that wasn't properly started. Kiba yanked on his hair. Oh my god, Hinata, I thought you knew. He screeched, whipping his head back and forth from the poor girl and the rest of the world. Hinata stopped speaking and her eyes fluttered, her head starting to spin. This isn't happening, this isn't happening. This is happening, she screamed in her head, stumbling backwards. The last coherent thought she had was the realization that she was falling, quite ungracefully, into a stall full of baby chickens. Hinata Heim! Someone shouted as she collided with the wood, crashing through, scattering the cardboard pen of chicks into the street. In an instant people were running to catch the chicks and two men had hurried over to pull her up from the wreckage. Naruto still had not moved. Sasuke sighed. Must he do everything? Barker, he said simply, slapping his friend on the back of the head. Immediately, Naruto's senses kicked in and he rushed to where she was being handled, pushing the two civilians out of the way to gather his limp wife into his arms. He smiled sheepishly at the crowd, Hinata's head lolling oddly on his chest. Surprise, he said with a laugh. The street smiled happily back at him and a few people whooped as they scrambled to continue their pursuit of the baby animals still chirping at their feet. Sakura shook her head, seeing suddenly that Hinata now had a long gash on the back of her leg that was starting to bleed, staining Naruto's clothes. She looked at Sasuke and her eyes were tired. I should probably go sort this all out, she stated, hefting an alert Haru from one hip to the other. Sasuke nodded and turned to Kiba. The poor man was now downing another glass of sake guiltily, Shino nearby looking thoroughly confused. I'll go. Sasuke sighed once more, shoving his hands in his pockets to console the horrified Inuzuka and his dog. Hinata felt like someone had taken a hammer to her head. That, or someone was pressing their thumb on the growing bump forming just on the crown of her skull. Hinata, the girl in question sighed, opening her eyelids blearily. Sakura-chan. A low chuckle emitted as Sakura dotted her face with cold rag. They were, or, at least, Hinata was, lying in the master bedroom. The ceiling seemed to warp above Hinata's head as she fought for clarity. She wasn't wearing the kimono anymore, but instead what seemed to be the traditional underclothes, though at this point she really didn't care. Welcome back, Sakura chirped quietly as Hinata slowly awoke from her stupor, rubbing her eyes slowly. Sakura shook her head at the sight and moved away, depositing the rag in a shallow dish on the nightstand. Hinata, I have some news for you, she started, excitement tingling her professional tone. Hinata sank back in the pillows and braced herself for the inevitable. You're about 4 weeks pregnant. Hinata's breath caught. So it wasn't a dream. She marveled, squeezing her eyes shut, the hands rubbing her eyes pressing on them so purple dots exploded under her eyelids. Sakura's mouth twisted uncertainly. Do you want to talk about it? Hinata took her eyes from her face and stared at the ceiling. Did she? No, not really, she wasn't even ready to accept it right now. She was simply allowing the reality of the situation to sit unsurely in her mind, not allowing it to touch her. Truly, it wasn't that she didn't want to accept it. She really wanted nothing more than to let life simply explode and everything fall into that wonderful happiness she seemed to have possessed before all of this. But she was only 17 years old. She wasn't anywhere close to thinking about children, let alone actually having one. With Naruto no less. All at once Hinata shot up, hair falling in disarray down her back. Naruto! She cried, staring at Sakura. The pink-haired Kunoichi gently eased Hinata back down, Hinata having immediately grabbed the back of her head as soon as she'd become upright. No worries, Sakura soothed, he seems to be taking it, rather maturely. Hinata felt pins strike the back of her eyes, fighting not to cry. She remained silent though, unable to voice how she was feeling, how embarrassed and upset. Sakura knew how girls operated though and patted Hinata's hand with reassurance. Would you like to talk to him? I could go get him if you'd like. She started softly, standing up with the bowl of hot water. Hinata didn't reply, but instead slowly got up, walking shakily to the closet. Sakura watched her movements, still holding the bowl. After a moment, and opening the closet a fraction, Hinata turned her head over her shoulder. Please allow me to make myself presentable. She smiled weakly and Sakura smiled back, eyes staring at the back of Hinata's head. With pale fingers, Hinata's hand curled round the wood of the door. All right, Sakura agreed with a whisper. Sakura-chan just left, Naruto stated casually, walking into the bedroom. Hinata stared at her feet, silent. A quiet laugh. You should just see Hatsuharu, he's already got his father's reflexes. Hinata blinked. The bed shifted as Naruto sat down beside her. That's good. She tried to keep her breathing even and controlled, attempting to think of the situation as a logical test that should be approached with calmness. Stuttering would not help her, she had to remain focused at all costs. Emotions would not be allowed to surface as violently as they usually did. Her sanity at this point was depending on it. How do you feel? Sakura said you managed to hit your head again. A pause and Hinata lifted her eyes for a moment, flashing them at Naruto. He was staring at the wall, a somehow natural smile playing on his features. You seem to be doing that quite a bit lately. He caught her stare and kept it, but to her intense surprise Hinata did not blush or stutter or even look away. She held it, and as she did she was thinking of what to say in reply. She saw something she had not expected to find. A mask, well made and well worn. Have you done that? She questioned softly, still staring at the spheres of blue that muddled in confusion, Naruto's eyes reflecting easily his thoughts. What? He said with a breathy laugh, a bit taken aback. Hinata blinked at him, mesmerized. Have you always hidden your feelings like that? Could I really never have noticed? Naruto's eyes hooded with darkness. He stared at her intently, eating her away with thoughts Hinata could not trace. Hinata found her lips moving on their own accord. Do you always smile, like this, when you feel pained? She whispered it, too deep to realize her voice was so quiet. Were all your smiles like that? So forced. Her voice dropped away as he reached out and touched her face softly with his hand, rough and tight and warm. Hinata did not stiffen, but felt she relax instead. Not all of them, but sometimes, yes. It's easier, isn't it? He said with a tiny smile, to laugh instead of cry for what you can't change. You're so observant, and here I thought I'd be able to get away with it for a little longer. You always seem to do that, see right through me. His voice cracked a fraction, eyes so tired, so laced with stress and exhaustion. Her own eyes widened. The epiphany hit her like a brick wall, stealing the air from her lungs and the beat of her heart. All this time, he'd been more alone than Hinata. All at once Hinata felt her body move without any sort of thoughts, any sort of motive except to comfort him, to somehow get across the point of what she wanted him to feel for a change. To reassure him. In one smooth motion she wrapped her arms around his neck. If her face had not been buried in his shoulder, she might have seen the shock on his face, arms held open in astonishment. I'm here. Hinata began, frighteningly calm, I will always want to be here for Naruto-kun. She dug her fingers in the fabric of his clothes, voice muffled slightly. I want to hear his troubles. I want to know what makes him sad and angry, and happy. I will always listen and I will never judge. I want us to be honest with one another, and to never hide anything. Anything, I promise I'll listen as best I can, I'll try to help you. I don't want Naruto-kun to ever feel alone again. Hinata fought internally with herself, attempting to keep composed, but in the end she couldn't stop herself from forcing the words out. I want Naruto-kun to know that I may not be able to be there all the time, but I'm going to try. I'm going to try especially hard for Naruto-kun, and for me. I want this to be a happy ending. I want us to be happy together no matter what. Naruto stared at the wall, unable to say anything. But I can't do this alone. Not now, not after this. She whispered, tightening her hold, I can't by myself. I'm so scared. I thought I could, but Naruto I can't. I can't. She dissolved into tears. She was frustrated, and incredibly vulnerable. Her little plans of conquering the situation were rapidly disappearing before her eyes, and there was nothing she could do. Ninjas do not cry, shinobi did not break so easily. She was better than this. And yet, she felt as though the whole world had opened up. That there was vision beyond her own, beyond code and rules of honor. That it was possible that one might share the deepest fears with another being and not be held against it. That, somewhere, there was a respite. It was a crazy, new idea. She wasn't exactly used to physical contact. But still, she really found herself comforted. Naruto held her tightly against him, almost to the point of squeezing the life from her. We'll do it. We'll get through all of this mess. You better believe it, he murmured against her ear, basking in the contact. Had it really been weeks since he'd last found himself holding his wife? His mouth twitched into a smile, genuine this time. He'd really missed that way she fit. Hinata lay, stretched across the bed, staring up at the ceiling. Naruto breathed evenly beside her, his arms tucked up under his head. Both of them had been silent for some time, content in just being near the other. There was a sense of comfort that seemed to have ignited between them after Hinata's teary proclamation and all the craziness of a few hours. It's funny how those things always seem to happen around Naruto. Do you think I'll be a good mother? Hinata asked suddenly, breaking the quiet. Naruto rolled his head to look at her, but she didn't stir, eyes still trained to the plaster. Fantastic, he half yelled, staring at her, why would you think otherwise? She shrugged, a silly crooked smile on her face. My mother SD when Hanabi-chan was born, so I never really learned much from her. She responded quietly, sheet rustling as she turned her head too. You probably already knew that. Then as though she just remembered her sister, Hinata bolted up. How is my sister? Is she well? She asked, almost frantically. Naruto grinned, teeth glimmering in the darkness. You could say that. Hinata looked back up at the ceiling, relief flooding her with a sigh. Naruto. Where's your mother? She heard a stilling breath beside her and didn't dare look his way, hands straying to her stomach, trying to touch the skin there as casually as she could. A moment passed slowly as Naruto contemplated his answer. Where she always wanted to be, I guess. With my father. Hinata couldn't help but smile. Leave it to Naruto to be an eternal optimist. That's romantic, she said aloud, not meaning to voice the silly, girlish thoughts in her head. She blushed suddenly and swallowed. Yeah, I know, right? A pause. Still, sometimes I do get bitter. Sometimes I wish that somehow she could have still managed to be here. Hinata blinked in concentration. What happened to her? Kakashi told me she was too depressed to take care of me. She SD days after I was born. He smiled briefly, eyebrows furrowing as he thought, I guess she wasn't as strong as she thought she was. But then, I don't think I could have taken care of me either. I'm sorry. It all turned out all right. I don't really think about her as my mother anyway. They quieted, drinking in the darkness and flicker of summer air that broke through the trees every now and again. Have I told you about my mother? Hinata asked suddenly. Naruto's eyes were closed, but one opened lazily, staring at her. Bit and pieces here and there. It's one of those things I don't press on. You get sensitive every time I bring it up. I don't remember her as much as I want. It makes me feel guilty. She said gently, curling her legs up, pale and white against the sheets. I didn't know that. He yawned, his cheek resting against his shoulder. She let her eyes flick out the window, at the stars swirling under covers of cloud. It's going to rain tonight, she murmured. Naruto grunted in approval. What did she look like? Your mother. Hinata sat up slowly as Naruto asked, his voice thick with what sounded like sleep. Father says I favor her. I have her eyes apparently. She whispered, getting up to silently pull a blanket over him. What was she like? The mumbled question came tumbling from his mouth like a second thought as he sank deeper into the mattress. Hinata, with snow-white fingers, removed the sash from his head, his hair falling round his face in silky strands. She hesitated before bending down and staring at his peaceful face. I remember her smiling, but I don't ever remember her being happy. Hinata said calmly, pulling back. She'd been too frightened this time, but maybe next time she'd have the courage to kiss his forehead. She'd know someday what it was like to feel that hair between her fingers, liquid gold. As soon as she was sure he was truly asleep, she slipped from the bedroom, walking quickly to the bathroom nearby. She slid the door open. No moonlight shone through the dark, so her reflection appeared silvery and mysterious as she stood before the mirror. Hinata remembered lonely nights when she was a girl, sitting on the edge of the bathtub and staring at her face. She had not played this game since then, since her father had seen her in the garden one morning feeding birds crumbs from her skirt. How funny, she had not remembered such a thing until now. Seen her and called her Haruhi. The one she saw now was clouded by the warm rain that had started up, slowly hitting the windows of the house with fat plops. She stared at her profile, the contours of her face, her cheekbones, her eyes, the curve of her nose and the arch of her brows. Slowly, with a practiced hand she plaited her hair and gently sn it over her shoulder before holding her bangs back with nimble fingers. The cold of the tile set into her as she stared at herself in the mirror, turning her head in different ways. Two pale pearls stared out of the snowdrift of her skin, shining on the mirror, harzed with rain. A hand touched the cold plate of glass as she traced her mother's illuminated image. Her mother's name was Springtime, but she'd never seen a face so coldly beautiful as this. In the quiet darkness, Hinata decided that her child would never know the courteous detachment she had in her own childhood. He would know warmth, he would know summer, and all the love she could give. Her heartbeat raced as she touched her stomach, so very much aware of the being that was forming in her. In one wondrous moment, she knew, and as she rolled it off of her tongue she instantly understood how meant to be such marvels are, how nature knows ahead of time. She knew his name even before she met him, a secret she would keep to herself as many mothers before her had. A quiet whisper to the darkness, a fluttering greeting to the beautiful stranger she could not begin to know at all, but still found herself loving more deeply than any other. Hinata wondered if every woman felt this way when she discovered what it meant. What it meant to yearn to hold something so much when it was barely more than a conception. She wondered if she was the only woman to sit in the bathroom at midnight, calling her baby by name. Kiyoshi. A tiny little voice, swallowed by darkness. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.